So look here. One day I took an Uber with my preteen, and we had a really fun drive with the driver, who was kind, and they like to play this trivia game of like, would you rather and why, right? So they give you two options, you pick one, and you kind of explain why, which is really fun. We had a phenomenal time, and it really ended up leaving an impression on my preteen, right? So much so, she actually referenced it again like a couple of days later, then a couple of weeks later, and she just kept saying she was really nice, and I didn't inform her of anything different. My daughter is not green regarding LGBT plus community, right? She meets kids during in-person events, and I also have a child who is married to a same-sex partner, and her partner too calls me mom. So it's not like a secret thing. It's not a conversations we never had or heard, and we each have our own ideas and expressions about it, right? So last week, my preteen references that same Uber driver again because now it has become quite apparent that this individual is on a list of folk who represent what it means to be kind and a fun person to engage for my preteen, right? It's a core memory now. So this is when I decided that, okay, I'm just going to tell her. Not to change her mind about trans people, but to help her understand how we might have some preconceived ideas about folk based on their other external feedback or what we think we know about their identity expression, right? So now that piece of information has moved the goalpost on how we don't need to be nasty to folk just because we don't present the same, right? Whether it's trans, LGBTQ community, people with tattoos, like however people present, right? Okay. So I want to get into something that I'm just kind of slushing around a little bit, so bear with me, but it seems that that conversation just keeps on coming up and it keeps getting heated. And I'm kind of personally overly distracting conversations and like the puppet strings because I feel it fragments valuable energy. And to be very clear, this is about the core tension in the entire trans conversation. At least what I consider the entire conversation, because most people, in my opinion, are just kind of talking past each other because they're actually answering different questions without maybe realizing it. Or maybe I'm just separating it as a different question. But anywho, you get to decide, right? Because I'm posting it on the internet. So let's break down the two conversations that I hear going on whenever this debate, the ping pong is going back and forth. One of the conversations is gender expression, right? Which is about how someone presents their clothes, their hair, the voice they use, the mannerisms, identity and internal experience, whatever the social roles and expectations are, right? So when we're framing that, it's who am I? How do I express that outwardly? Okay. This is also where terms like feminine or masculine energy kind of come up, not being non-binary or gender fluid. It all kind of lives in that space, in my opinion. And in this conversation, then those terms, the labels man and woman, can be seen as identities or experiences that are not strictly biological. The second part of the conversation, in my opinion, is about womanhood or manhood. All right. And that's a conversation about biological sex, lived experiences that are tied to sex, like pregnancy, to reproduction, pregnancy, menstruation, puberty, male puberty, etc. So we tie things like with social roles there historically as well, roles that are assigned based on the gender, right? Sometimes we're throwing in cultural definitions of what it means to be a man or a woman as well. So in that framing, what is a man, what is a woman, and what qualifies someone to be one, right, biologically. In this conversation, man and women, those labels are often treated as some categories that have boundaries and can be clearly defined. Now, let me tell you why I think it feels so heated. because I think it's heated and the smoke is so hot and high because people are debating across those two categories. One person is saying, respect my identity and my expression, and then another person might be saying that you're redefining this category that is fixed and it has a fixed meaning, right? Both feel valid, both are valid within their own frame, but they're not exactly answering the same question. So there's a lot of this back and forth and over by grandmas under the bushes and through the way, right? On top of that, there's a few ingredients that are getting sliced and diced into both sides of the conversation or debate. And some people are trying to protect freedom of self-expression, okay? Some people are protecting the definitions and boundaries. Some people are reacting from personal pain, personal trauma, or the concern about erasure, right? And some people are just trying to make sense of whatever this rapid cultural change is, right? From whatever powers that be or the people themselves who are living these daily experiences. Now, let me throw in a couple of more ingredients, okay, or points to consider into this little pot while, let it cook, right? So let me throw a couple other ingredients in there. When we start thinking about chromosomes, right? Chromosomes are part of our DNA in every cell that we have. And allegedly, most people have the XX, which is typically categorized as female, and then the XY, which is typically categorized as male. And these are set at conception and remain the same throughout life, right? Our hormones do not rewrite DNA. When we talk about trans, we know that people can, if they can afford it, go through hormone therapy like estrogen or testosterone and can change like the secondary sex characteristics, right? And when I say that, I'm talking about body fat distribution, muscle mass, breast development or reduction, or maybe it happens surgically. The voice can change because testosterone can deepen your voice. The skin texture can change. Hair growth patterns can change based on this hormone therapy, right? And these changes affect expression, the appearance, the physiology, but not the chromosomes. So hormone therapy can change how a body develops and presents, but it cannot change the underlying genetic code. If it's a lie, somebody please help me out, right? I'm just going from my understanding of the information that is available, right? But I haven't seen all information. Now, also to be fair though, biology isn't always strictly binary. There goes that keyword, right? Some people have variations like an XXY chromosome. I think it's called Klinefelter. An XO, which is the Turner syndrome, and I think it's called androgen insensitivity syndrome, right? So these are things that kind of don't map cleanly for us, right? When it comes to appearance or identity that has to do with chromosomes, what's built into the DNA from conception, right? So maybe the real debate is not who's who or what's what, but maybe our real concern is about who gets to decide that, and when it is decided, how does it affect our day-to-day reality? How does it affect marriage laws? How does it affect what bathroom I'm going into? But the question is, who is actually making that decision? We all have opinions about it. We all have some type of emotional power behind it and how we feel, right? But who's actually getting to pin it down? Does how we feel and what we think about it matter when the powers that be go to present these laws and social standards and the ways that we're allowed to present and act and all of those things? Does it even matter? Should we be directing our information to those people? Should we pay closer attention to those individuals? Or am I just the asshole, for wanting to for being tired of the conversation? Anywho, I put it online, so you get to have an opinion about it if you want to. I welcome it. Enlighten me.